There are places in this world that don't appear on any map. Not because they're new, but because someone made sure they were removed. If you look closely at satellite images, you'll notice it, entire patches blurred out. Roads that suddenly end. Forests with no trails. Buildings with no names, no addresses, no records. Places where GPS fails, compasses spin, and signs appear only after you've already crossed the line. Most people never notice them, and that's the point. We grow up believing the world is mapped, measured, documented. That every place has a name and every building has a purpose. But that belief only exists because we've been trained to trust what we're shown and ignore what we're not. Forbidden places exist because something happened there. Something that was never meant to leave. Sometimes they're sealed behind fences topped with razor wire. Sometimes they're guarded by men who refuse to answer questions. And sometimes they're hidden in plain sight. Quiet buildings you pass every day without ever wondering why no one goes in or comes out. The signs are always the same. No trespassing. Authorized personnel only. Restricted area. But they never explain why. And that's what should scare you. Because when danger is obvious, warnings are clear. Radiation symbols. Biohazard labels. Structural collapse notices. But forbidden places rarely tell you what they're protecting you from. They only tell you not to ask. There are stories, quiet ones rarely written down, about people who cross those boundaries. Urban explorers, surveyors, contractors hired for one-day jobs that never led to a second paycheck. People who thought curiosity was harmless. Most of them weren't criminals. They weren't thrill seekers. They were just people who wanted to know what was behind the door. And for some reason, they were never seen again. When authorities are questioned, the answers are always vague. There was no record of that person being there. They must have gotten lost. The area was unstable, but families notice the details that don't add up. Phones found miles away. Vehicles abandoned with the keys still inside. Security footage that cuts out exactly when the person enters the restricted zone. And then, silence. What makes forbidden places different from abandoned ones isn't decay. It's maintenance. Someone still watches them. Fences are repaired. Cameras are replaced. Fresh warning signs appear overnight. Even decades after a facility is supposedly shut down, lights can still be seen deep inside. Power humming through buildings that no longer officially exist. If a place was truly empty, it would be forgotten. These places aren't forgotten. They're guarded. Psychologists say humans have an instinctive fear of restricted spaces. Not because of what's inside, but because of what isn't allowed to escape. The brain interprets secrecy as danger, silence as threat, the absence of information as a warning louder than words. And yet, curiosity always wins, especially when the place starts calling back. Locals living near forbidden zones often report the same things. Low humming sounds late at night, strange lights moving where no buildings should be, animals refusing to cross invisible lines. Children are usually the first to notice. They talk about places adults pretend not to see. Doors in hillsides, staircases that lead nowhere, buildings that feel wrong. Parents tell them to stop imagining things. Authorities tell them to stop asking questions. But the places remain. There's a reason the most restricted locations on Earth are surrounded by stories instead of facts. Facts can be challenged. Stories can be dismissed, labeled as rumors, legends, conspiracy theories. And the more unbelievable the story sounds, the safer the truth becomes. Because no one investigates what they've already decided isn't real. Some forbidden places were created by accidents, others by experiments, and a few by discoveries that should never have been made. Places where something was uncovered, something that didn't fit our understanding of the world, and the fastest solution was to bury it. Not just physically, but historically. Erase the records, seal the entrances, make it illegal to talk about. And if that doesn't work, make the people disappear. The scariest part isn't that these places exist. It's that we walk past them every day, behind unmarked doors, beneath ordinary streets, beyond fences we're trained not to notice, places the world pretends don't exist. Because the moment we acknowledge them, we also have to accept that something inside is still waiting. And once you know where to look, you start seeing them everywhere. Abandoned places are supposed to feel empty. That's what we're told. Peeling paint, broken windows, silence so thick you can hear your own heartbeat. They're meant to be frozen in time, left behind by people who moved on, forgotten by the world. But some places don't feel abandoned at all. They feel aware. Urban explorers talk about it in hushed tones. That moment when you step inside a supposedly empty building and realize the silence isn't natural. It's not the quiet of decay. It's the quiet of something listening. Your footsteps sound wrong, too loud, too deliberate, and suddenly you're aware of how visible you are. There's a difference between a place that's empty and a place that's been emptied. Abandoned hospitals are the worst. The beds are still there, the curtains half drawn, medical charts left hanging like someone expected to come back after lunch, wheelchairs positioned neatly against walls, as if waiting for patients who never returned. In some rooms, the lights still work, not flickering, not broken, just on. Explorers have filmed themselves walking through these buildings, joking nervously, trying to keep the mood light. But when you watch the footage closely, you notice something else. The cameras shake, not from fear, but from hesitation. They stop walking mid-hallway. They turn around for no reason. They whisper even when they're alone. Later, when asked why, many of them give the same answer. It felt rude to be loud. That's not fear. That's instinct. Because somewhere deep in the brain, there's a recognition happening. A sense that the building hasn't finished with the people who enter it. That something inside remembers what it was built for and doesn't like being disturbed. Prisons have a similar effect. Cells still locked. Personal items scattered across concrete floors. Names scratched into walls, layered over older names, until the surface looks less like stone and more like a record of suffering. In some abandoned prisons, doors slam shut on their own. Not violently, just firmly, as if correcting a mistake. Guards' towers sometimes still have chairs facing the yard. No one sitting in them, but positioned perfectly. The creepiest thing about these places isn't the darkness. It's the order. The sense that everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, and that you are not. There are abandoned research facilities where machines still hum behind locked doors. Buildings officially shut down decades ago, yet drawing power from somewhere. No paperwork explaining why. No public records of what experiments were conducted. People who manage to get inside describe a feeling of being evaluated, like walking through a scanner that doesn't exist. They feel watched from angles that shouldn't be possible, corners without cameras, ceilings without openings. One explorer claimed his phone camera kept autofocusing on empty doorways. Another said motion sensors triggered lights behind him, but never ahead, as if the building wanted him to leave, but also wanted to make sure he knew he was seen. Then there are the places that pretend to be abandoned. Factories with rusted exteriors and shattered windows, but freshly swept floors inside. Schools with vines crawling up the walls, yet chalk dust still settling on blackboards. Entire apartment complexes condemned by the city, but warm air drifting from sealed units. If you knock, no one answers, but sometimes you hear movement anyway. Locals often know these places are wrong long before outsiders do. They avoid them instinctively, take longer routes home, cross the street without realizing why, tell their kids not to play near certain buildings but never explain. When asked, they usually say the same thing. That place isn't empty, and they don't mean haunted. They mean occupied. There's a reason many abandoned places are surrounded by fences that appear years after the site was shut down. A reason security cameras are installed even when no one claims responsibility for them. A reason patrol cars pass by at regular intervals but never stop. These locations may look dead, but someone is still keeping track. And sometimes, something is still learning. One of the most unsettling patterns is how abandoned places respond to attention. The more people talk about them online, the faster they change. Entrances sealed, floors collapsed, entire structures demolished overnight. It's almost as if these places don't want witnesses. Or worse, they don't want to be remembered, because memory gives things shape. Names give them weight. And once something is clearly defined, it can be questioned. Whatever exists inside these buildings thrives in uncertainty. The explorers who go missing are often written off as accidents, structural failure, bad decisions, trespassing risks. But the patterns are impossible to ignore. They disappear in areas with no obvious hazards. Their last footage shows nothing unusual. Their final words are almost always calm. Too calm, as if something convinced them everything was fine. And then the camera falls. The scariest part isn't what these abandoned places were used for. It's what they're still capable of. Because buildings remember. Walls absorb sound. Floors soak up footsteps. And when a place has witnessed enough fear, pain, or secrecy, it doesn't forget. It watches. It waits. And the moment someone steps inside who wasn't meant to be there. Every city has a second body. You don't see it when you walk the streets. You don't feel it when traffic roars overhead or when neon lights flicker in shop windows. But beneath the concrete, beneath the foundations poured decades or centuries ago, something else exists. A hidden anatomy, tunnels beneath tunnels, rooms without records, passages that don't appear on any map but still connect important places. And once you go far enough down, the rules you live by on the surface quietly stop applying. Most people think underground spaces exist for simple reasons. Transportation, plumbing, storage. Subways, sewers, utility corridors. Boring, necessary infrastructure. That's only the first layer. Below that are older systems, forgotten routes carved before modern planning. Catacombs, wartime bunkers, smuggling tunnels, escape routes built for emergencies that never officially happened. And below those are places no one admits to building. In some cities, construction crews accidentally break through walls that shouldn't be there. Smooth concrete where dirt should be. Doorways sealed behind brick, layered over again and again, as if someone wanted to make very sure they stayed hidden. When these spaces are opened, work usually stops immediately. No explanation, no press release, just a sudden change of plans. Crews are reassigned, sites are filled back in, non-disclosure agreements appear where safety reports should be. And if you ask questions, you're told the same thing every time. It's not safe. Urban explorers who manage to access deep underground areas report a strange shift once they pass a certain depth. It's not just the lack of light or fresh air. It's something psychological. Time feels unstable. Phones lose signal long before they should. GPS spins wildly, placing them blocks or miles away from their actual location. Recorded audio distorts, stretching seconds into something unrecognizable. Phones lose signal long before they should. GPS spins wildly, placing them blocks or miles away from their actual location. Recorded audio distorts, stretching seconds into something unrecognizable. Some say it feels like the city above has stopped acknowledging them, as if they've slipped out of range. In abandoned subway tunnels, you can sometimes hear trains that don't exist. The sound approaches, echoes, then fades, without wind, vibration, or rails. No lights, no schedules, just motion. People who follow the sound often report the same thing. The tunnel seems longer than before, straighter, cleaner, less damaged, like it's leading them somewhere newer or older. No one agrees which. There are underground chambers beneath major cities that are warmer than the surrounding earth should allow. Rooms where condensation forms patterns that resemble symbols rather than moisture. Walls marked with shapes that don't belong to any known language, but feel intentional. Not decorative, instructional. In certain areas, compasses stop working entirely. Not spinning, just dead, pointing nowhere, as if north itself has been removed. That's when explorers usually turn back. Those who don't often describe crossing a line they can't quite explain. The air changes first. It becomes heavier, harder to inhale, like breathing through fabric. Sounds behave strangely. Footsteps echo before they happen. Voices seem delayed, as if the space is reacting instead of reflecting. Some claim they hear whispers, but not in a language they recognize. Others say it's their own voice they hear, repeating thoughts they haven't said aloud. There's a theory among urban researchers that cities grow downward the same way they grow upward, layer by layer, each generation building on top of the last. But what if some layers weren't meant to be permanent? What if certain underground spaces were meant to be sealed? Not because they were unfinished, but because they were complete. During wartime, many governments built deep shelters meant to withstand unimaginable destruction. Official records list their locations, capacities, and purposes. Unofficially, there are shelters no one claims responsibility for. Facilities without insignia, rooms without signage, doors without handles on one side. Some are found beneath hospitals, others beneath government buildings, a few beneath places of worship. Why there? Why connect secrecy, healing, power, and faith all underground? Like it was built to receive something, or someone. And then there are the tunnels that don't stay where they're supposed to. Explorers mark their paths with chalk, tape, even GPS tags. When they return, the markers are gone, or worse, rearranged. Arrows pointing the wrong way, symbols altered, distances that don't match memory. In rare cases, the exit itself becomes difficult to find. Not blocked, just absent. Those who make it back to the surface often struggle to describe what they saw. Their stories contradict themselves. Timelines blur. Some insist they were underground for hours while surveillance footage shows days. A few never fully readjust. They complain that cities feel hollow now, that buildings seem thin, that crowds don't sound the same, like something essential is missing or like something followed them up. The idea that what's beneath us is dangerous isn't new. Ancient cultures believed the underworld wasn't just a place of the dead, but a realm of rules inverted, where names held power, where light was intrusive, where attention itself could be an invitation. Modern cities may have buried those beliefs, but they didn't erase the spaces. And those spaces remember why they were hidden. Because underground, there are no witnesses, no windows, no sky, just layers of secrecy pressing down. And once you go deep enough, you stop being a visitor. You become part of the structure. Some places on Earth aren't marked on maps. Not because someone forgot. Not because they're secret for national security in the obvious way. They're restricted because knowledge itself is dangerous. They exist in deserts, forests, islands, and mountains. Hidden, fenced, patrolled, and constantly watched. Sometimes the fences are subtle. Sometimes they're brutal, topped with razor wire and motion sensors. Sometimes the area looks ordinary until you cross the invisible line. Restricted zones are everywhere. Every country has them. Every government maintains secrets, whether through documents, gates, or sheer fear. Some zones are industrial nuclear test sites, chemical storage, or military laboratories. Others are natural volcanoes, caves, or lakes deemed too dangerous to enter. But the scariest zones are the ones no one admits exist. There are forests where no roads lead, and yet patrol cars drive through silently at night. There are islands where fishermen refuse to land, telling stories of men who vanished without a trace. There are research compounds no one acknowledges, yet their lights are on, always on, long after official records claim they've been abandoned. Explorers who attempt to enter these areas often notice subtle warnings before they even realize they've trespassed. A sudden silence in wildlife, birds flying in patterns that don't make sense, an unnatural chill creeping along the ground. They hear noises that aren't from nature. Footsteps in the distance, low hums, doors slamming where no building exists. And the people who enforce these zones, they're not always human, not in the way you expect. Some guards vanish when approached. Cameras positioned in impossible locations watch constantly, even in remote forests. Motion sensors trigger lights that no one turns on. Fences appear overnight where yesterday there was nothing. Vehicles parked to block roads vanish as mysteriously as they appear. It's almost as if the zone itself is alive. Then there are zones tied to history, places that carry weight beyond legal restrictions. Consider towns that were evacuated due to disasters, radioactive or chemical. Abandoned cities where the population was removed overnight. Buildings sealed with no explanation. Streets erased from records. Google Maps even obscured entire blocks. And yet, inside these cities, those who have dared to enter say it feels populated. By shadows, by whispers, by glimpses of people or something like them moving in corners just beyond the eye. Sometimes it's not about the physical danger. It's about the knowledge you gain. Because some zones hide truths that the world isn't ready to face. Ancient artifacts, cryptic machines, experiments gone wrong, and structures that predate modern civilization. Things that once seen can't be unseen. There are rumors of zones that no drone, camera, or satellite can penetrate. Clouds refuse to linger above. Electronic devices die the moment they enter. Explorers report losing perception of time. Hours feel like minutes. Days feel like hours. And occasionally they describe seeing things. Symbols on the walls, lights that form shapes that weren't there before, as if the zone itself is rewriting memory. Most people never hear about these zones. And those who do are warned to stay away. News articles are scrubbed. Wiki pages are deleted. Social media posts disappear. Accounts vanish. And those who attempt to speak publicly are dismissed, labeled as paranoid, insane, or hoaxers. Some zones are man-made, some natural. Some are marked officially dangerous. Radiation, toxic chemicals, unstable terrain. But others have no reason at all for their restrictions, except the warnings themselves. The lack of transparency is the first test. The absence of explanation is a challenge. And for those who ignore it, the consequences can be permanent. In certain countries, these restricted zones hold the unthinkable. Facilities where biological or chemical research was conducted in secrecy. Sites where technology was tested that defied explanation. Areas of unexplained disappearance, sealed off for decades, yet still perfectly preserved as though time itself respects the rules within. Even highly trained operatives avoid some zones. Military personnel speak of them in hushed tones. Scientists refuse to comment. Local law enforcement will tell you only that it's off limits. No further details. The few explorers who enter anyway describe the same sensation. The air thickens. Shadows move without wind. The mind plays tricks, or perhaps reveals what has been hidden for centuries. Devices malfunction. GPS signals vanish. Cameras fail. And always, there's the feeling of being observed, assessed, measured by something that doesn't exist in any manual, textbook, or record. The most unsettling thing? Some zones don't want to be found. They respond. Barriers appear. Paths close. Lights flare. Roads that didn't exist yesterday block the way today. Signs materialize to warn, scare, confuse, or mislead. A zone isn't just forbidden. It's alive. And the more attention it receives, the more it resists. Explorers who survive say one of the rules is universal. Leave no trace. Don't mark, don't photograph, don't name it. Because the moment you try to define it, you become part of its story. And once part of its story, there's no guarantee it will let you leave unchanged. These places are proof that not all secrets are buried for convenience. Some are buried for survival. And for those who wonder why, you only have to step just beyond the boundary once. To see, even for a moment, what the world was never meant to reveal. Because once you know the truth behind a restricted zone, even looking away is impossible. By now, you've learned the patterns. The abandoned places that watch. The tunnels beneath our cities that bend reality. The restricted zones the world refuses to acknowledge. And the forbidden spaces that change the people who enter them. But there is one final truth, one ultimate layer of forbidden places that few ever speak of. These are not just restricted for safety or secrecy. These are the locations deliberately erased from history, the ones governments, corporations, and sometimes civilizations themselves have chosen to hide. They are so dangerous, so profoundly incomprehensible, that acknowledging their existence is considered perilous. Few explorers have even whispered about them. Fewer still have returned. And those who have never speak of what they saw with clear words. These places are often hidden in plain sight. A mountain peak, a forest, a remote island. Seemingly ordinary locations that, once entered, reveal another world entirely. Hidden entrances, sometimes disguised as natural formations, lead to corridors, chambers, or even entire underground networks. Once inside, the environment shifts. Light behaves strangely. Sounds echo in impossible directions. Hallways seem to stretch longer than physics allows. Walls appear to breathe subtly, expanding and contracting, as if alive. Some of these spaces exist outside time itself. Explorers who have dared enter report days passing in minutes, or minutes stretching into what feels like weeks. Watches stop working. Phones die, never to restart. Compasses spin endlessly. And yet, they feel a compulsion to move forward, deeper into the structure, as if some unseen force is guiding them. And then there are the entities. These aren't shadows, spirits, or ghosts in the traditional sense. They are more like sentient memories, beings or forces that are intrinsically tied to the location itself. Some explorers describe humanoid forms that vanish when approached. Others see figures that mimic their own movements or even their own appearance, standing silently just beyond their vision. Some report hearing whispers, not in words, but in meanings. Ideas, fears, memories conveyed directly into the mind. A language older than words. The psychological effect is profound. Those who spend time inside these ultimate forbidden places report memory loss, disorientation, identity shifts. It's as if the location absorbs fragments of them. Sometimes they awaken with knowledge they never had before, but knowledge that corrodes sanity. Maps of impossible cities, symbols that make no sense, memories of events they did not live, dreams they cannot distinguish from reality. And the most terrifying aspect? The compulsion to return. No one goes into these places out of curiosity alone. Once someone encounters them, a portion of their mind becomes irrevocably tied to the location. They think about it constantly, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in waking hours. Some attempt to sketch or document what they saw, but the drawings and notes never fully match the experience. Pages disappear, sketches fade. Even video recordings often show nothing abnormal, leaving only the memories as proof. Families and friends notice changes immediately. The person becomes withdrawn, obsessive. They speak of places no one can verify. They wander at odd hours. Sometimes they vanish for hours or days, claiming to be following a trail no one else can see. Those who survive such encounters often warn, never go back. But the pull is inexorable, because these locations aren't just physical, they're sentient. They learn, they adapt, they feed on the curiosity, fear, and obsession of those who enter. And every return trip strengthens the bond. Eventually, the location claims a part of the visitor. Slowly, subtly, irrevocably, there are whispered stories of explorers returning decades later, unchanged in appearance, but with eyes that hold centuries of memory, voices that speak in unplaceable tongues, and a calmness that terrifies those around them. They describe events, objects, and beings that defy all logic. And yet, every detail seems real enough to make you question everything you believe about the world. Some believe these ultimate forbidden places are repositories of knowledge too dangerous for humanity. Archives of civilizations that existed before ours. Laboratories where physics, biology, and consciousness were tested beyond ethical or conceptual limits. Temples or sacred sites where mortals were never meant to tread. And the most chilling thought: the existence of these places suggests that the world as we know it, the streets, the cities, the forests, the oceans, is only the surface, a carefully maintained layer of reality. Beneath it, hidden and protected, lie truths too immense, too dangerous, or too alien to be revealed. Which brings us to the question that every explorer eventually faces. If you know the location of such a place, if you have glimpsed it, if you have returned, are you still yourself? Or has a part of you become something else? Something aligned with the place, something it can call back at will? Some say that to document it, to reveal it publicly, is to invite its attention. That the act of remembering is dangerous. That even speaking of it aloud can trigger a subtle shift, a faint echo of the place that reaches toward you across the world. And so the ultimate forbidden places remain, hidden, guarded, alive, waiting for those who are curious, for those who are unwise, for those who are compelled. The surface world carries on oblivious. Life continues above ground. Roads are built, cities grow, people sleep, and yet, all around, in mountains, forests, deserts, underground, and beneath oceans, the world hides things it is not ready for anyone to know. Because once you know, you can never unknow. And sometimes, the place knows that you know. It waits, it remembers, and one day, it may call you back. End of story. Voiceover tip for Midnight Knocks. Remember, curiosity has a cost. Some doors should never be opened, some places should never be entered, and some secrets are better left forgotten.